and welcome to the Everyday Defender podcast. My name's Chris Goosen, and I'm joined as always by my friend from the Netherlands and the man with the Sentinel plan, Koos.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for the great introduction. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about Sentinel, to be honest. But first of all, it's still dark outside here. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, and I see the sun shining at your end. I believe it's hot weather in Australia right now.
It's actually manageable. We've had a lot of rain and stuff. And
really?
Yeah, okay. So just it's actually really sort of nice, not too hot. I think we'll have 30-degree plus tomorrow again. So hey, not complaining. I do prefer the heat over the cold. So it's all
so
good.
Everybody in Europe will recognize we had 2 weeks ago. We had I don't know, the most snowfall since I don't know how long. It was like 20 centimeters of snow covered in the country. So it was a big mess.
I saw on the news, on our news, they were talking about how Amsterdam had sort of frozen over and people were like, there was ice on all the streets and people were just like slipping all over the place.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun that made the news over there.
Well, slow news day in Australia, right? The funny thing is so for our American listeners, I still get text messages from like the storm warning system in Texas because they still have my phone number in their thing. And just yesterday I got like some sort of really weird ice warning thing, so they must be having some really cold weather over in the US at the moment, I guess too. But anyway, so today's episode has a little bit of an AI flavor to it, I guess, and we really don't want to have this be a sort of an AI echo chamber, but we definitely do also want to bring sort of relevant things, right? So I'm going to be talking a little bit about this thing called Agent 365. Confused me to no end when I first heard the announcement and sort of started digging into what it was. And this announcement sort of comes from Microsoft Ignite. And then, Koos, I believe you've got some AI related news for us as well.
Yeah, it was actually a coincidence, right, Chris, that you and me separately came up with these topics, and it was a great fit for today's episode. Yeah, so I talked a little bit about Security Copilot in the past, and I was also slightly critical on some parts of it back then. But since our last episode, which aired in October last year, quite a few new things got announced and released. And I think now really is the time to start messing with it and see how it can make the lives a little bit easier of your security analysts. So Security Copilot, V2.
Yeah, I'm excited. Very cool. And so I guess, just, jumping into it, I think I'd heard this announcement when I was Ignite. It was exactly 2 months ago now that I was at Ignite. And sort of at first I thought, Agent 365, like what's the big deal? We have an agent for M365 now. No, that's not it at all, right? And so if you think about it, I'd like to think sort of 2024 was the year of the LLM, right? We had all this sort of the mainstream adoption really of ChatGPT and all of these sort of large language models. And then last year, 2025, was very much the year of agentic AI, right? That catchphrase and that buzzword of agents and agentic AI was sort of the thing. And so I'm really hoping that 2026 is going to be the year of AI governance. That would be my hope. And I think kind of looking at what we're seeing with Agent 365, maybe might be onto something there, right? So Microsoft frames Agent 365 as sort of the foundation for that emerging agentic era, right? Because where we have these autonomous agents they're not just assistants or chatbots, but they're actually participating in business processes. So Agent 365, what is that thing? It's not an agent for M365. It's actually a control plane for all the AI agents across M365 and Teams and Dynamics and sort of Power Platform, all of these different systems that that organizations use. So it provides that sort of central place for cataloging, but also registering and monitoring and governing. That word governance, I think, is so important. Sort of agents across the organizations, right? So if you think about it, we've had this for human identities for a while, right? In Entra ID, you can go to one place and you can see everything about a user and their identity. And this is kind of that sort of thing for agents. So agents get a unique agent ID, they're calling it, which then allows them to authenticate and follow least privilege access and have policies applied to them, right? So if you think about, again, integration into things like conditional access, where you can actually now be sort of very, very granular about what an agent can't do, things like that. So I really like what I see here. I think it's a good step forward because we've needed this, right? And if you ask why, well, if anyone who's listening to this, if you've played with AI and agents in your organization, right, through custom agents or workflow bots or sort of anything that is doing this sort of automated work, you've probably seen that you can very quickly there's sprawl, like these things just multiply. And you can really, really quickly lose track of what an agent is doing. Does it exist? What is it doing? And all of that. Who owns the agent? What project does it belong to? All of that type of stuff, right? And so Agent 365 really is that sort of, they're trying to counter this by providing this sort of centralized registry and inventory of agents and provide some sort of visibility, right? Because thinking about it, agents can act autonomously, right? They trigger workflows. In many cases, they have access to really sensitive data because you're giving them a data set to ground, right, with, and so they can access stuff that most users can't access. And they're obviously running and acting continuously at scale. So being able to have a compliance center, if you will, right, for this, I think makes a whole lot of sense. Logging, threat detection, all of the really important stuff that we care about, and making sure we sort of standardize that governance across not only agents that are Microsoft agents or third-party agents. Think of things like possibly ServiceNow.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah. Or everyone, sort of every organization these days has an agent for something, right? The funny thing was, I was looking at some tenants yesterday or today when I was sort of prepping for this, and I took a look at some customer tenants and also my own tenant. And even in my own tenant, where I've not enabled any of the stuff and I have exactly one user, there's like 126 different agents that are showing up in Agent 365 from different vendors, right? So ADP has an agent, Xero, which is like accounting software here in Australia, there's an agent. ServiceNow has an agent. Like, everyone's building agents for all this stuff. Now, in my environment, they're not enabled, but they're visible to me there. So and then of course, organizations are building their own, right? Copilot Studio is a thing, and it makes it really, really simple for folks to dabble with the stuff and build agents. And it's the same challenge I think we've always had when you think about, I guess, what they used to call citizen development, right? Or low code development, where you give business users the ability to build stuff, right? I mean, this started with Excel, and people were building macros for Excel. Very quickly, that stuff can get kind of out of control, and there's one person who knows what it's doing and no one else does, and no one understands it. And so the fact that we can kind of standardize our governance across all agents, regardless if they were built in-house or whether they come from a third party or whether they come from Microsoft, I think is really, really powerful. So from a feature perspective, they really sort of are talking about these sort of 5 pillars of functionality that Agent 365 provides, right? And again, I want to call out, the stuff it's very, very new. It's still really, I think it's still considered to be in preview. So, this is all very conceptual at the moment. I don't know anyone who's taking sort of full advantage of actually using and deploying this stuff. But I think what we are seeing is the framework for something that is going to be really, really interesting. So, looking at those capabilities, we're looking sort of that registry that I talked about, right? That sort of central inventory of all the agents within the environment, where you can provide access control to these things, least privilege, get a really good snapshot really quickly of like, what is the agent actually, what data is it acting on? What data does it have access to? What permissions, what things, what systems can it feed into? All of that type of stuff, right? Visualization, dashboards, telemetry, all of the stuff that IT folks need to kind of be able to track things, track risk, and I guess report on ROI. Because the other thing with this is everyone's running towards this AI thing, spending massive amounts of dollars on AI or euro on AI. But if you don't actually have a way or a metric to be able to track the value that it's providing, you're just throwing money at something, right? So really important to be able to do that as well. Interoperability is another one of those things. So, connecting agents between multiple apps and different organizational data, different third-party platforms, stuff like that. And then, of course, security, right, which is the thing that we really, really care about as well. And this is kind of where, it extends Defender protections into agents as well. So being able to detect misconfigurations and vulnerabilities, threats, prompt injection, that type of stuff, using the Defender platform, but, across agents as well. So treating an agent very much like we've always treated a human identity or a service principal or those types of things. So,
but Chris, this is not only Microsoft agents, then I believe, right?
Correct. So third-party agents, ones that you build yourself, sort of all agents in the environment, under one sort of.
People like to use Claude or any of the other tools. They benefit from this as well.
Well, yes, if it's an agent that's running in your M365 environment, right? So if it's something completely outside of the M365 ecosystem, then no, it's not likely going to be covered here. But anything that's connected to or attached to or operating within your M365 environment will be, visible here. So, what about licensing? I think was your next question, right, Koos? As always,
cost you some money.
Well, it probably will, yes. Now, how much it will cost you, we don't actually know at this point because
really?
that information is it's not available yet for us, or at least not that I can find. But, and as always, it's complicated, right? So I think the intent here is that there will be an Agent 365 SKU, which will apply to agents. And so it will very much treat agents like digital workers, right? Where you would apply a sort of an A365 SKU license to an agent. It doesn't mess or interfere with your existing M365 or Copilot, or if you're using Azure OpenAI for anything like that, licensing stays the same. This does not affect that in any way. It's really important to just think of it as it's a governance tool for your agents, and so you're paying for the governance functionality of it, right? So again, agents require their own licensing. There's no, there's sort of a dedicated SKU. Pricing is not available yet that I've seen, but this stuff is definitely showing up in tenants, right? And I think it's because if you can sign up through the Frontier Preview program and be sort of a preview tester for this stuff, and you can get access to it. And I think Microsoft are obviously giving it to folks or to organizations, at the moment as part of the preview program. But at some point in time, there will be a license cost to it. So think about that too, I guess, if you are going to jump into this, because if you've got 2,000 agents in your environment and you go and sort of enable all of this stuff, at some point in time, you're going to have to pay the piper for that. So like I said, these things, the agents will appear, so they sort of appear in Entra ID, just like a digital employee, right, with an agent linked to it. So they'll show up in org charts. You can have permissions. They can interact with other systems like a user will, and that also means you can govern them in a way that you would typically govern your user accounts. But as I said, it doesn't replace your Microsoft licenses, right? Your human users still need a Copilot license if they want to use Copilot, for example, or a Dynamics license for D365. This is really just a governance thing. It covers that governance plane, and it's not really there for execution. So, I think it's really early days. But like I was saying, I think governance is something that we really need to think about in 2026. And I really like that there's something sort of being worked on very actively here for us to help orgs. And it's not going to be this, what it's going to cost us. That's going to be interesting to see. But, organizations that are making that sort of investment in agent adoption are probably going to be fine to pay for the governance side of this. And I'm also sort of encouraged to see, I had some really good conversations at Ignite with folks, consultants and folks who are building governance frameworks, right, for AI across the business. And I think that's really good, because I think we need that. I think this stuff's going to get away from us if we don't have it. So very encouraged to see. Go check it out. If this is, if you are dabbling, I think every company at this point is dabbling with AI and Copilot and agents and stuff. So go and have a look. If you log into the Microsoft Admin Center, you'll see the agents sort of menu option sort of show up for you in your tenant now, and you can have a look some pretty interesting information there about, what agents you have in the environment, who's using them, what the usage of these things are, who owns the agent, that type of stuff. So go and check it out.
Yeah, great stuff. I already noticed, Chris, that in a lot of different places, agent support popped up. So Entra ID identity protection, for example, a P2 feature, now also is providing risk statuses to agent logins, which you can, again, use in conditional access. And also in conditional access policies, I noticed there's an option now to block agent usage, for example, on certain resources, and even in access packages. So not only now a user can request an access package, but also an agent can request one, or you can decline the ability for agents to request certain access packages. So it's great to see that Microsoft is implementing it. It is confusing, however. Those features, as far as I know, are part of the P2 license. And now there's also an agent-based license. So it might be because it is in preview that Microsoft is also still figuring out
the licensing. Yeah, fair enough. And and I think that stuff all kind of ties together to the sort of agent ID, right? That is that sort of source of truth or for what an agent is within the environment. So you're right. The stuff lights up kind of everywhere. And kind of keeping track of all of the moving bits is a bit interesting. So, but we'll keep you up to date here as things progress and as we kind of learn more about the stuff as well. We can always dig into it a little bit more again.
Yeah, we probably should. And also there's always the discussion about data governance as well, right? And maybe companies don't want to have their users to use any LLM which is out there and share sensitive data. So we can probably cover that subject with Purview in a later episode in the future.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so I mentioned Security Copilot, something I wanted to revisit. But before we do that, you already announced me as, what do you say, the Sentinel guy or Sentinel?
The man with the Sentinel plan.
Man with the Sentinel plan. Yeah, well, one thing I shortly want to touch on. Normally, we don't do news items in this podcast, but I think I discovered that something got introduced, which is really cool. I talked in episode 10 in September of last year. I talked a little bit about Sentinel Data Lake, and the topic came back several times, I believe. And one of the major shortcomings back then is now resolved, and that is the ability to extend your Defender XDR data natively in Data Lake. So before, when you had Defender data for Defender for Endpoint, for example, where you have very tables with a lot of logs, like the device network events, for example, or process events, if you wanted to keep them for longer than 30 days, you had to store them in Sentinel with high costs involved and everything. And because Data Lake was part of Sentinel, you had to ingest it through Sentinel in the Data Lake. And there wasn't a native option to do that for Defender Log. So long story short, it is now possible. You can just go into your table, like device network events, extend the retention beyond 30 days, and then it gets stored in the Data Lake for I believe only 2.5 cents per gigabyte per month or something like that. It's quite cost effective. Obviously, these will generate lots of gigabytes in large environments, so still be careful, but it's much cheaper than it wasn't really feasible to store it in Sentinel before, and now it is. And a lot of MVPs and other people in the community created all kinds of elaborate stuff. I was also guilty of that by using ADX, for example, in the past for this. And I saw others now streaming stuff in an intermediary service and then put it into Sentinel Data Lake. But then you have a lot of different resources you have to maintain and everything. So great to see that Microsoft now has this natively included in the product.
Simple is always better too, right? It's a lot easier to manage simple than it is complex and all this other stuff. So
and I bet Microsoft was aware of this shortcoming from the get-go, but they also need to take into account the impact on hardware and performance and everything. So they probably want to introduce features more granularly, and you see that with Copilot now as well, by the way. So that's Sentinel for now. Security Copilot is now free for E5 customers, Chris. What do you think about that?
Hey, that was one of the sort of big announcements from Ignite as well, right? And I think this is great because I think a lot of organizations have been interested, but have been very cautious about sort of dipping the toes because of the cost aspect, right? And so I think the way they've done it, and I'm really glad you're the one breaking down how this the SEU stuff works, because man, it breaks my brain sometimes trying to figure it out. Like
Also a little bit confusing, right? Just like licensing.
So I'm glad you're the one breaking it down. But yes, I do think this is great, and I do think we're going to see an uptake in organizations now, sort of giving Security Copilot a try. Why wouldn't you now, right? If you've got E5, why wouldn't you try and sort of use it now and take advantage of the stuff?
Yeah, and before I break down how it works and how what is free and how it gets charged, you mentioned the announcements on Ignite, and sometimes it's too bad that we put AI on everything nowadays, and it brings down the actual value of some really cool stuff, I believe, because I'm not sure how it is with you, but I'm getting a little bit of AI fatigue at times. When you hear that your washing machine and your refrigerator now has AI as well, right? It's like, what's up with that? It's
well, I saw
more of a marketing.
Yeah, I saw a hearing aid. There's an ad for a local Aussie ad here for hearing aids. And the hearing aids now have AI, right? Technology. So yes, you're right. I think everything is just
and we have AI machine learning and automation for ages now. That's great, but don't just rename it AI and think it's a new invention. And the same with these kinds of announcements. Sometimes it's like, okay, it's AI everything, and I'm starting to ignore some of the announcements. And also, to be honest, with this one, I was a little bit skeptical at first, because Microsoft says customers with Microsoft E5 will now get 400 Security Copilot units. So those are those SCUs, those costly compute units, each month for every 1,000 paid user licenses. So if you have, for example, 400 users with an E5 license, you get 160 SCUs. If you have 4,000 users, you get 1,600 SCUs per month, that is. But then at first I was like, there's the catch. This is Microsoft telling me it is free, but it's not actually that useless. And you're probably paying a lot instantly extra over it, because, for example, the 160 SCUs for 400 users, or even the 1,600 SCUs, that's only 2 SCUs per hour. And I remember how quickly I burned through those in no time a couple of months ago when I started messing with them. And I was like, okay, they're giving away free 2 SCUs for an organization with 4,000 users. How is that really usable? But first, it's good to understand that it's not converted into an hourly rate. You can actually have those SCUs, those 1,600 SCUs, and you can spend them in a month, or you can even spend them within a day if you like. It's up to you. But it's not calculated back into an hourly rate, and that it will be depleted constantly whenever you do a couple of simple queries. And the second point is something we talked about already in this episode: agents. So back when we discussed Security Copilot, when it was new, I was already a little bit complaining about the fact that when you went in, for example, into the Defender portal and you opened up an incident, it automatically generated a summary for me. And every time I revisited that incident, the same summary got regenerated, and my SCUs were gone in no time just by browsing some portals, right? Now, obviously, Microsoft also acknowledges this. So now they give much more granular controls on what Copilot automatically does for you and what it does not. So one of my pro tips for this episode is already, if you have Copilot enabled, either through your own SCUs, which you have deployed already, or the free Copilot SCUs from Microsoft, go into the Defender portal, go to Settings, Copilot in Defender, Preferences, and there you can now disable the auto generation of summarizations and instance. And you can also, and you see a screenshot in the show notes, you can also say, I only want automatic summarization whenever an incident has a severity of high, for example. So you can manage a little bit better. And also in the Copilot portal, you can now also enable, disable, for example, if you want to use those Copilot compute units for Intune or Entra ID portal or other solutions. So you have much more control on how you're going to spend those compute units. And there's also more elaborate permission controls now on it. And you can create even more multiple workspaces, as they call them. It's not a log analytics workspace. It's more like a logical container for compute. And you can assign workspaces to, for example, your admins, your identity team, separately from your security analysts, for example. But with agents, obviously, it might not be necessary to query and do a lot of compute throughout the day any longer, because you can be more efficient with it that way. So the agents, I would advise starting by only using the SCUs for running Security Copilot agents. And if you want to do LLM stuff, look into Microsoft Sentinel MCP server, for example, where you can connect your own LLM like GitHub Copilot or Claude or any other solution and talk, so to speak, to your environment that way. It's a little bit slower, but that way you will not burn through those SCUs because the compute is taken care of at a different level. And with agents, Microsoft also provides now a security store. So it's another app store, like, I think, or marketplace, so to speak. And there you can find some Microsoft predefined agents, like the phishing triage agent, which will automatically perform otherwise manual tasks for triaging phishing incidents. But you can also now find a lot of third-party agents in the store and build your own, of course, with Copilot Studio. So again, disable generation of incident summaries and try to use agents as much as possible. And then you'll probably see that the SCUs will be might be even sufficient, which you get for free from Microsoft. If they're not, you can still deploy your own SCUs. And the free amount of SCUs is deducted at the end of the month, according to Microsoft. So that's great. But be careful with those pre-provisioned SCUs. Because if you pre-provision an SCU, it is running on an hourly rate. And if you're not using it, you still be paying for it, because Microsoft has actually reserved some hardware in the back end for you. So if you have E5, check if the free SCUs are enabled on your tenant already. If not, start messing around with the SCUs, but be careful. Either remove them once you're not using them, or keep the amount very low. Microsoft says they're still rolling out this feature. So they started actually at Ignite, as you mentioned, Chris, but due to some hardware constraints and performance constraints, they are now doing it in phases for customers. So that's actually the bad news, unfortunately. Some customers are still waiting for this. It's a capacity problem, and Microsoft will let you know 30 days in advance when they will enable it on your tenant and provide you those compute units. So we already touched on some security attack vectors, new attack vectors on AI, right? Chris, you mentioned the agents with running on user privilege or high privileged access, and I also saw some great blogs by some fellow MVPs a couple of weeks on this subject. Well, first of all, Entra ID identity protection now has an for agents capability. It is in preview. Like you said, agents can operate autonomously and on behalf of the user, but they have some different sign-in behavior. Microsoft is now tapping into that to decide if a agent probably should have a certain risk status, and then obviously you can block that through conditional access once you know that. I will post a couple of links in the show notes, actually. There was an awesome blog from Dirk van der Woude and also Raymond Roethoff, both security MVPs, and you may guess, Chris, where they're from.
Yes, I'm sure they're Dutch, right? Because
they're Dutch.
All the great security work comes out of
no, that's not what I was saying, but I thought I would keep the running gag alive here.
Right.
Yeah, so actually Raymond had a nice approach. He wrote an excellent blog about how you can protect the Copilot Studio, which people use to create their own agents, with the help of Defender for Cloud apps. So by leveraging Defender for Cloud apps, making sure that people are using Copilot Studio more safely. So definitely check that out. He also did some great security research on Defender for Identity in the past, by the way. So make sure to follow him and check out his articles.
That's very cool. He's one MVP that I have not come across. So that's cool. I like that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, again, especially in the Defender for Identity space, he is very technical, but he's also a good speaker. I saw him several times, and he really has a relaxing way of explaining stuff. So great guy. And lastly, I want to touch on something that I thought was kind of fun. So I was actually part of the organization of Yellow Hat, which took place last week. And one of the things we did for the on-site attendees, we had a second hall, so to speak, where people could attend into a Capture the Flag. And the Capture the Flag was provided to us by Blue Raven, which is also already a great company because they provide KQL training and all kinds of lab environments for security analysts to simulate all kinds of attacks and train staff in that way. And the people from Blue Raven provided us the Capture the Flag. And what's funny is it was originally meant for people on site as the attendees. And the Capture the Flag went open the night before Yellow Hat started, and it closed the night after Yellow Hat started. So they had about 48 hours something to compete. Separately or in teams and find all the flags. But obviously, people are going to share login information across the world to invite other people into there, which was fine. That we didn't account for that, but that's fine. Obviously, unfortunately, those people who actually solved the Capture the Flag outside of the venue were not able to participate in the prizes which we were handing out. But nevertheless, there was one guy, Nicolas Suter. He's from Switzerland, and he thought it would be fun to see what how AI can assist him on the Capture the Flag. And he used Azure Fabric, real-time intelligence MCP server, to connect to the lab environment from Blue Raven and let AI assist him on his hunt. And he wrote down his experience and all of his lessons learned in a blog. Wow. And I think you should definitely check that out as well. The link is also in the show notes. Really cool stuff.
He's definitely living in 2028, isn't he? That's pretty awesome.
I'm feeling a little bit slow when I read blogs like this, Chris, to be honest. But but really, and he also acknowledged, obviously, that the Capture the Flag is meant to train analytical capabilities from a person, obviously. And this you can consider this cheating, of course. But I think it's still a very fun exercise, and especially because he wrote down his experiences, and it's very cool.
Thank you for providing that link. That's going to be a really interesting read for sure.
Yeah, it sure is. So a lot of links in the show notes this time. And this brings, I think, to the closing note, our community project, Chris. This time, I brought a community project from Ofer Shezaf. He is, as he calls himself, the SIEM guy at Microsoft. People in the community probably know him as the father of Sentinel. He worked on ArcSight, a different SIEM solution from HP, and he came to Microsoft in 2019 to help create Microsoft Sentinel. And around that time, I started working with Microsoft Sentinel, so I've met and spoken to Ofer a couple of times.
He's a cool guy. He's such a relaxed person, isn't he? Very chill, but such a very, very smart, nice guy. Really cool.
And like you said, very knowledgeable. And he's also, you might not think of him this way, but he's also a very technical guy. And I think this community project proves it, because he created an Azure Sentinel solutions analyzer. So as he stated himself, he said, I get asked all the time which tables each Sentinel connector writes to. Surprisingly, the answer isn't straightforward. That's true. I encountered that a couple of times as well. Many connectors share tables and other write to multiple tables. And until now, there hasn't been a single complete list. So he built one. Well, he also admitted that he got a lot of help from GitHub Copilot agents with Claude Sonnet to do most of the heavy lifting. He wrote a Python script, which you can run against your environment, and it will retrieve all this information. But he also published pre-compiled, comma-separated files on his GitHub with the current state of the environment. And I was actually doing an SAP integration this week for a customer. And there with Security Bridge is a third-party solution. And I noticed that was indeed listed in his overview. So very nice indeed, which was also a solution writing to multiple different tables. So it can be confusing sometimes. So if you're working with Sentinel, with especially third-party connectors, definitely check it out.
Yeah, very nice. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that one. I don't do all that much work on Sentinel, but I do know Ofer, so that's a very cool thing. So very nice.
Very cool project of him.
Wow, that's very nice. That kind of wraps us up for the first episode of season 2. If you've just listening to us for the first time, or you've come back after listening to season 1, welcome back. We have deployed and published our updated website, so we've got some, a bit of a cleaner look and feel there. Kind of makes reading all the content and the show notes stuff a lot easier now. So
major kudos to Chris, by the way.
Oh yeah, look, it was a
the heavy lifting,
fun holiday project. And
did AI create the website, Chris?
No. Sadly, I can't claim that AI did that. But it was a fun holiday project, and AI did help with some imagery for sure on that. But it's been fun. I'm glad that that's there. So folks, if you haven't already checked it out, please do check that out. If you have any sort of questions or comments or feedback on anything really, please do reach out to us on the socials, or you can find either one of us on LinkedIn as well. All of our stuff is pretty easily available. And we definitely look forward to episode 2 coming around again.
Please leave a comment, and like Chris said, if you have any feedback, also negative feedback, we're open to, and also many potential ideas which we should cover in the future. Would be happy to hear from that.
Anything, burning problems or challenges, or anything you'd like to know more about, definitely do reach out and let us know.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.